The Dallas Mavericks, 37-39 at the time of this recording, 11th seed. They are now 4-8 when Kyrie and Luka play because they beat the Pacers. Pacers did not play Tyrese, Miles Turner, etc.
Their team.
And they have a question that they have to answer. So back in 2018, I believe it was, Kevin O'Connor just recently wrote an article on The Ringer posing a question if the Mavericks should tank. Because back in 2018, Mark Cuban actively tanked the season, and that resulted in Luka Doncic. And this year, they have a top 10 protected pick. So if they finish with a bottom 10 record, that pick now most likely goes to them. But if it falls outside the top 10, it goes to New York Knicks. So basically, should the Mavs try to compete? Now, the question I'm going to pose is it more beneficial for the Mavericks to secure a top 10 pick and add to the young core of Luka, Josh Green, and Jaden Hardy, or maximize this window and convince Kyrie Irving to stay?
It's a no-brainer. What will be more beneficial is tanking to get a lottery-level talent. What's going to happen is they're going to push for the play-in tournament, because if you tell Luka, okay, we want you to set the last 6 games, here's the ticket for the lottery, have fun, he's going to lose his shit. That's as simple as that. When you have a 23, 24-year-old that's a top 5 player already, and you have Kyrie Irving as an unrestricted free agent this offseason, you're making a first impression. So for the Mavericks, quite clearly, 11th currently in lottery odds. They're right below the Bulls with the 10th spot and right below Utah. They can climb up to about 8 or 9 where Washington is, as those morons go for the play-in tournament. So they can get a top 8 or 9 pick, no doubt. But ultimately for Dallas, they have to compete for the play-in. Knowing, hey, look, in the first round of the playoffs, if we get a 1-8 matchup with Denver, with Luka, we have a chance in that series to make it competitive, and that is why it's a no-brainer here.
And so it's a no-brainer to tank, what you're saying.
It's a no-brainer to compete for the playoffs because you're trying to get the right and first impression for Kyrie this summer when you want to extend
Are we not too far down the train with Kyrie? Do you think making the play-in, losing either in the play-in game or the first round, do you think that really matters if it's a play-in game where they just miss it altogether?
The truth of the matter
you want
is,
to keep Luka happy?
Yeah, but I'm saying for Kyrie's sake, I don't know if a play-in game changes anything for Kyrie.
It's Luka smiling.
The way you started your monologue, I thought you were leaning towards tanking. It's not more beneficial because I believe you said it's more beneficial to the team. Am I incorrect or no?
Adding a lottery-level talent to this team would be huge long-term because you're not a contender now.
It would be huge if Kyrie does decide to stay. It would have to be a conversation where Mark Cuban is like, listen, this is better for us next year. Kyrie and Luka are on board, and they just let it happen. We're not sure if that is going to happen or not.
Long shot.
And the answer to the question is this. Are you banking on a lottery pick, a top 10 pick, to be more impactful right away than what you could be with Kyrie Irving staying put on your roster? And that's going to happen by winning games. There's a difference between the Mavericks and other teams that we usually beg to tank. I begged for the Bulls to tank. Their best players are Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. We know nothing's happening there.
Respect. Keep sleeping.
We've been begging the Wizards to tank. They keep on making mid moves. It's unbelievable. They're about to miss a play-in again.
You were smart to move off of Zach
being the
LaVine.
Celtics right now.
You were smart. You were smart.
With the Mavericks, they don't have this issue. Their top best player is not some guy who will at most get you a first-round appearance. Luka, as your top guy, can get you an NBA championship. Kyrie Irving as his second option. If things click eventually, because the issues on the Mavericks are far more than just these two.
Is that this season?
It's not this season.
So then what are we doing?
But if you win games, Kyrie Irving stays, you give him the contract, next season they can make a couple moves, mostly at the center position to get a starting caliber one. And I think they're in good shape.
They could. It's not that far away. And I know a lot of people put this on Kyrie, but you can't say this is really a Kyrie problem when he's coming to Dallas and put up better numbers, better efficiency than what he did in Brooklyn with the Nets. But, I mean, the biggest issue with this Mavs team, listen, if you want to tank, it makes sense for the team. Luka and Kyrie, I find it very hard to believe they're going to agree with Mark Cuban, front office, whoever, and say, yeah, we'll sit out these last 5-6 games and get a pick. It's just not going to happen. But this Mavericks team, I don't think it's all like, dim and glim for them, right? I know we had a poll out there, like, whose future are you worried about the most? And it was like the Wizards, the Bulls. I think the Mavs were in there. The Mavs aren't as far off, I think, as people think, because you already have Luka, obviously one of the best players in the league, Kyrie, who, right up there, one of the most efficient players, perfect number 2 for Luka. But it really just is getting defenders, because DFS obviously is not this shut down elite guy, right? But he was probably one of their best perimeter defenders, if not the best perimeter defender. So, and that's saying something, because that roster is not great. But you really look at this team, and it's not offense that they're missing. And Kyrie was just to get there to enhance their offense. If they're able, like you mentioned, Joel, to bring in a defensive-minded center, which for whatever reason they don't play JaVale McGee, beyond me, and bring in some more perimeter guys that could actually guard and hopefully hit 34% of their threes. I mean, you get a couple of those guys and hope Kyrie just doesn't go crazy. You're going to be in contention next year.
Shit, 34% is like Josh Richardson.
You want a consistent 3-point two-way
I want
player.
a Kevin Herter.
You want that.
That's not always going to be available.
I want a Desmond Bain on the team.
I mean, we got Luka,
I'm sure they would
no
kill for
state
Desmond
income
Bain.
tax.
No, but I like what you
some
said.
cap
I think
space.
it is easy to say that it's been Kyrie's fault, but it has not been
It
Kyrie's
hasn't.
fault.
No, it's defense, and we've been saying that. I wish Riv was here, because that was our biggest gripe when we came to the Kings and Mavs, because the Kings aren't a good defensive team by any means, but the Mavs have just been so bad that you really cannot sit there and say they're going to be able to get past a 7-game playoff series. Although the Kings can't either. Like, that's exactly what I said to her. I trust them just a little bit more, and I think they've proven that.
And you know what part of the Mavericks' problem is?
What?
It's Luka Doncic.
Trade him.
In 2 different ways. Now, Luka is far and away the greatest player you can build around after losing Dirk Nowitzki. Number 1, Luka's doing it again. He's not defending. And it's a matter of when your star player's not trying, he's bringing no energy, that rubs off on the rest of his teammates. And so when you don't have the personnel and you don't have the superstar at least giving some level of energy and focus on that side of the ball, everybody else is falling out of order. So you see they're 30th in total rebounding, 30th in offensive rebound. They don't get anything on the glass. They're terrible in transition. But the other problem, it's the LeBron effect with the Mavericks. The LeBron effect is what is killing them. Luka Doncic was so great by year 2, bringing them to the playoffs. They couldn't build around him a team with lottery-level talent. Most young guys 19 years old get a couple of years with younger guys on their timeline, and that's what allows them to build a thicker foundation. Think of Boston with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Oklahoma City with all of their young entourage, and even a team like the Portland Trail Blazers that's stuck in mediocrity. Those teams funnel up a bunch of young players. With the Mavericks, the only lottery picks on this roster are Luka, Kyrie, Markieff Morris, and Frank Ntilikina. Only one of those guys the Mavericks drafted. So when you trade a first-round pick, which became Cam Reddish or Luka, you trade 2 firsts to Kristaps, you trade a first to Christian Wood, you trade another first in the process for Kyrie Irving. There's not much young talent here, and you're relying on guys like Josh Green taking in the 20s of the draft, and you're never getting these high-level players. So when you lose a Jalen Brunson and you have to sacrifice a first-round pick, your only point-of-attack defender, and then also a key rotation guard, everything falls out of order, and I think that's the issue here. Because of how great Luka is, it really thinned the Mavericks' margin for error in the roster construction, and clearly they're not capable enough to then figure that thing out, which is just clutching up here and not fucking up the way they did, pardon my French, by letting Jalen Brunson go for nothing.
Yeah. I'll say this. A lot of what you said there is accurate. The only statement in that whole thing that I disagree with was the Celtics and their rebuild, where it was more so the Nets blessing them while they already had a decent foundation.
They were in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Right.
Like they had an ECF appearance prior to drafting Jason Tatum, and then they go again, and then obviously you have the duo of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum that's just going to continue to have success. But the Mavericks situation is a lot easier if Kyrie Irving was not an unrestricted free agent next season. If it was locked and loaded, Kyrie is signed in for that 2023-2024 season, then this becomes a no-brainer. If I am the Mavericks, I tank to try and get the best pick available. But because Kyrie's situation is so up in the air, and it is not signed and sealed by any means that he will be back in Dallas, it makes things difficult. Because the best way to convince Kyrie Irving to want to continue to be a Dallas Maverick and continue to play alongside Luka Doncic is to win. And I agree with you guys there. However, I look at this Dallas Mavericks team. They are not a good defensive team by any means. They do need a little bit more size. You mentioned their energy is not there really at all. This team is not meant to win an NBA championship. And I say this very consistently. You are failing the season if you do not win an NBA championship. And this current team, the way that they are built, are not meant to win an NBA championship. You have Luka Doncic, and for that, you get a lot of respect from me because you're good enough to win a playoff series. You're good enough to win a playoff game. You're good enough to, if you put yourself in that play-in situation, Luka's good enough to get himself into the playoffs. He's that type of player. And, of course, Kyrie Irving's there with him. The two are an amazing scoring duo together. They've been that since they've played together. But the issue has been in these last 12 games where they're 4-8, Luka's missed some time, Kyrie's missed some time. It's not a Kyrie issue. Kyrie's come into Dallas and played amazingly. He is a 50, 40, 90 player since joining the Dallas Mavericks. He's been phenomenal.
He might not be that anymore. He's had some inefficient games. I'll fact check.
Kyrie?
Kyrie Irving.
Yes.
Kyrie, he's had a handful, but
'Cause I was gonna
overall
say-
with the Mavericks, he's been more efficient than what he was with Brooklyn.
The only
Yeah,
thing.
he's at 39% from 3 now.
Okay, well.
Yeah, 1% off.
Okay,
Montero.
I know. Screw me, but hey, it's pretty close enough that he is a 50, 39, 90 type of player. He's been
shooting like
unbelievable.
94% from
It's
the
just
line,
versus
too.
the Hornets. The 2 games
The
versus Hornets, he was
yes,
not good.
Yeah.
So for me,
Dennis Smith.
again, if I'm the Dallas Mavericks, I'm with you, John. I'm trying to put my team in a better position for next season. Is it unfortunate that Kyrie Irving is not signed and sealed to be on the team next year? Absolutely. It sucks really badly because you didn't trade your best defender in a solid role player in Spencer Dinwiddie and a couple picks to get Kyrie Irving for him to unfortunately leave this offseason. For me, though, the main point is to build a solid core around our guy, the franchise, Luka Doncic, the guy you know is going to be there for a few more seasons. You need to try your best to put your best effort forward to put a solid core, a solid foundation around Luka because they failed to do so far. The LeBron effect, perfectly said. He is too good, and right now it's speeding up the Mavericks timeline. The way that OG was talking about OKC and SGA speeding up OKC's timeline, that is what Luka has been doing for the past 2-3 seasons. Exactly. He's too good right now, and it's costing the Mavericks where they have failed to put together strong role players, a strong foundation around Luka Doncic. But it also doesn't come to the fact that Luka's hard to play with. Let's just be transparent. He is hard to play with because he is so ball dominant. The offense completely runs through him. Now that Kyrie is there, the ball's a little bit less in his hands, a little bit, but even still, his usage is still one of the highest in the association. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Mavericks do or decide to do for the remainder of this season. But for me personally, I'm looking for next season because this is not a championship team.
I still think they're capable of winning multiple playoff series this year. I do.
Multiple
What
playoff
do you want?
series.
At least 1 or 2 they can do
No,
it.
they're
With
not
Luka and
fucking
Kyrie
well.
in this wide open West, this West is wide open.
All right, very simple because there'll probably be the 8th seed or the 7th seed because of how close it is. So are they beating the Nuggets round 1?
No.
Are they beating the Kings round 1?
No.
They can. There's a chance.
Are they beating the Grizzlies
Still
round
some
1?
points back to back
I think they
games.
can beat the Grizzlies.
The Grizzlies' defense is a lot better than.
It's the best in the West.
Obviously, it's amazing, and the offense has gotten better.
John
It's
Morant
gotten a
would-
lot better, and that's due to Jaren Jackson breaking out.
John
offensively.
Morant would pulverize Dwight Powell possession by possession.
It would
No,
get
Sure,
ugly.
Luka would do the same to them.
no.
Doesn't matter.
Jaren Jackson, Steven Adams coming back.
No,
No.
Luka's gonna get his. You can't say that
For
he's
sure.
not, but they
He's
will
gonna make it hard,
They
though.
will
They're gonna
make it hard
Yeah.
on Luka. They will make it hard on
I just
Kyrie.
don't think that the season is just washed. I don't.
It's an incomplete roster.
not.
This is not a team
And
that
listen,
can go
John.
into the playoffs
And
with
listen,
and
John.
think it's gonna
I'll
win a
let you get
series.
away with what you just said because I was thinking about your statement and it was not perfectly said, Drew. I'm sorry. I disagree with what you said. In comparison to LeBron, sure, but the roster building has more to do with the front office just being inept. Jalen Brunson was not a lottery pick, but the way he played, oh yeah, he's a star player, right? We look at the teams. The Milwaukee Bucks, was Giannis a lottery pick? No, he's 15th overall pick. Chris Middleton, was he one? He's second round pick. What about Drew Holiday? He wasn't lottery either. They got him in a trade. They're not lottery guys. 76ers, most of that team has been built by moves. They've wasted their picks with Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz.
But all right, to say that it was made by moves, but Ben Simmons, #1 overall pick. Joel Embiid, #3 overall pick. They tanked for how many seasons?
got
Your
nowhere.
margin,
It
your
got nowhere.
margin for error is wider when you have an influx of lottery talents. The Mavericks
it's wider when you
don't
have
that.
a good front
And
office.
Daryl Morey,
Yes,
he
that
finessed
as
by
well.
trading
But
Ben
they
Simmons and
found
getting
James
James
Harden with the
Harden.
37th
Let me
overall
ask you.
pick.
The Memphis Grizzlies, we praise them for the roster building. The 2 lottery picks are Ja and Jaren. Dylan Brooks is not that. Desmond Bane is not that. He was a 29th pick in the draft. Steven Adams was a trade. Look at their bench. Tyus Jones, was he that? No. It's about just the front office being capable.
I
I
agree.
agree
That's
with
it.
you. I don't think Nico Harrison has any track record of building around a player, but I'm also saying that it would help. Like,
It wouldn't help because
76ers had Elton Brand in the front office paying Tobias Harris above Jimmy Butler, but because they had 1 million first-round picks, their margin for error was more wide. So there's
why
gonna be a
was
lot
it
of
if Ben
in-depth
Simmons did not
decisions.
pan out?
Ben
He
Simmons,
was great for
they
a couple
flipped
seasons, though.
and got
Yes,
and
James
they also got
Harden.
Harden.
Yes, which that was a fleece.
One of the best finesses.
But what I'm
we've
saying
seen.
is that ultimately it doesn't matter if that team has a top pick because they're probably messing up anyway.
I'll
Still
tell you
gotta
what,
hit on
Joel.
the pick.
Joel, there is some validity to your statement. I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying.
Like, if the Mavericks
similar to
would've-
how the Cavaliers could not build a team around LeBron, that they were inept in that
Yes.
right. Similar here. I'm not going to
And
disagree
also,
strongly.
I heard this take. I was with John Carlos yesterday. We was chilling, and he told me about LeBron, I think in 2007 or 2008, the year they won 60 games. And it was a take by Fluent that year the Cavs were the highest in payroll. They gave out the most money to free agents that offseason. That doesn't mean it was good decisions, you know? And that's the point that I'm making about the front office is that the Mavericks, I mean, they botched the Jalen Brunson thing. They could have had him for 4 years, $56 million.
Yeah,
That would have been a steal of a contract.
Yes.
They botched that move. Kristaps Porzingis trading him wasn't a botch
No.
because Dinwiddie was good. But Dinwiddie was good when he was backing up Brunson.
Right.
But the Bertans contract is absolutely
Egregious.
horrible.
It's egregious.
And they tied themselves to one of the worst contracts. I think if you're Dallas, Brunson, Luka, KP, if you have that now, it doesn't sound too bad. It sounds
At all.
it's
Sounds
a better
amazing.
situation.
like what we call a contender.
It sounds amazing, especially what Luka's shown you in the playoffs. It sounds amazing the way that Jalen Brunson played in the playoffs last year and how amazing he's been this season.
And they would have still
Kristaps
had
Porzingis, same thing.
And they would have still had Josh Green, who's not a lottery pick, but is a good player.
The front office
And
has had
Jaden
good
Hardy,
picks.
who they've drafted well.
Harden-
late.
The
Yeah, Harden's been
Porzingis
cool.
move pisses me off, Joel, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, King. The Porzingis move pisses me off because the Mavericks saw how great KP and Luka were that first series together against the Clippers in the bubble. Porzingis obviously gets hurt, completely changes the series. Then the year after, they struggle and they give up. They struggled together and they gave up on the Porzingis-Luka plan.
I
When
don't blame them.
It was already boiling
when
up. though.
Cuban, but why? Because it's hard to play with Luka.
but
It's also
Porzingis'
Porzingis has a
injuries
little bit of an
history.
ego to him that he should not. he
No,
doesn't
it's,
want.
more
it's
injuries
because
than anything, bro.
Porzingis was a ticking time bomb.
Yeah,
But
you're,
they
you're a
didn't.
7-foot big man who has lower body injuries. You're not going to get healthier with time.
Yeah,
But
Drew,
he's been on the Wizards and he's been great for them.
They're not doing
on an
anything.
NBA
They're not.
backwater.
They're not. But regardless of that fact, Porzingis has played well, and next to Luka Doncic, they should have been able to do
But
something.
KP has similar numbers to Washington that he had in Dallas. It's the
Yeah,
same
it's
numbers.
just a matter of expectations. Don't you think that the Mavericks eyed up Porzingis and said, okay, his value will never be higher, so this is the time to move him and get a little bit of flexibility.
They
with
got
Dinwiddie.
Spencer Dinwiddie and
They don't make it to
Bertans.
the
And they
conference
flipped
finals
Dinwiddie
without
for
him.
Kyrie.
Dinwiddie was huge.
That was a finesse.
Oh, we did that sometimes. Yeah, they did get Dinwiddie for Kyrie.
And Kyrie leaves, you got nothing.
True.
Well, no, you got that was Bertans.